Gig Gab, episode 454 for Monday, November 4th, National Candy Day 2024. Greetings, folks, and welcome to Gig Gab, the show by, for, and about working musicians. Here, as usual, in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton. And today, my guest co-host is someone that I think most of us are probably familiar with, at least in terms of his work, and probably in terms of him as well. Founding member, and I think only consistent, or one of the only consistent members of Blue Öyster Cult, has sold 25 million records with them. Penned some songs that are part of the American song catalog. Buck Dharma, thank you so much for taking your time and hanging out with us today.
Hello, Dave. I'm glad to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, same. I appreciate that. And I got that right? You have been one, if not the only consistent member of Blue Öyster Cult all the way through. Is that right?
Yes. Eric and my colleague Eric Bloom is in Blue Öyster Cult. I preceded him in the Software Underbelly, which became Blue Öyster Cult. So in that regard, I am the longest duration member. Yes.
Got it. Okay. Right. Okay. I knew he had been there a long time. So, okay. So
yeah, it's the only job I've ever had, essentially, you know.
It's not, seems never like it's been a pretty good gig.
5 decades plus, but it has. Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, was playing music. How did you? What was your genesis with playing music? Were you like most of us, that you just kind of picked up a guitar or an instrument as a kid? And
yeah, my dad was a sax player his whole life, not professionally, but semi-professionally. He'd play weekends, and he had a day job. And I was in a high school band, surf band, played surf music. And I was a drummer for a while, picked up guitar and sort of taught myself and, learned by just copying off records and later tape recorders.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then, of course, guitar magazines, and lately the internet. The internet's just chock-a-block with information.
It is. So that tells me that you still consider yourself a student of the instrument and all of that. Is that correct?
I still pick up stuff. Yeah. I don't study seriously. Maybe in my retirement I'll study seriously.
Sure. What better time? That's right. Yeah. Was songwriting always something that you wanted to do, or was it something that happened by necessity? I had Gary Burr on last week, and he talked about how well he was the guitar player in the band, and so he said they forced me to be the songwriter. Worked out really well for him. He goes and writes #1 hits in Nashville now. So, but what was it for you? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I sort of backed into writing, because I wasn't self-directed as a professional musician. I saw an opportunity to play in a band that had recording connections. And when I met Sandy Pearlman, who was our band's lyricist and mentor in the early days, he was one of the first rock critics, and he could get his foot in the door with record companies, and he got us demo time at like Mercury and Atlantic and Columbia twice. And so at that point, I got interested in songwriting, but I never really thought about it previous to that.
Interesting. Well, it certainly is.
I was playing surf music, but I was just covering, established hits.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously you primarily shifted from covering things to writing your own songs. Was at what point did you find that you actually liked writing your own songs? Or maybe you don't, but maybe you figure out it's what you need to do. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, as far as writing lyrics, I never used to even listen to the lyrics of songs or pay much attention to them. It was the music that interested me, and when the the band that preceded Blue Öyster Cult, the Soft White Underbelly, when we started assembling material to present to record companies, you know, all of a sudden the lyrics took on, you know, an interest and a meaning for me. And the first song I ever wrote was The Last Days of May, which appeared on our first records. And that's the first time I'd ever written a lyric, you know, but I got a pretty good course in, you know, what the idea was in terms of a lyric. And then I started listening to songs and realizing what was good and what was not good about, you know, the various recordings and song lyrics. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. Amazing. Well, I mean, you're still writing material. You recently released that last couple of months, the end of every song, which is out there on everywhere. I found it on YouTube, but
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the end of every song is on YouTube. The video, also all the streaming services, and I invite your viewers to go there and check it out. It's been about 3 years in the gestation. You know, I haven't done anything on my own outside of the band in quite some time, and it's really good.
I think I agree. It's fantastic. You know, our mutual friend Dan Levitin sent it to me, and he's like, "You got to check this out. It's the best thing one of the. I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I think something to the effect of one of his favorite things, and that's come out in the last 10 years. And I went and listened, and it was like, yeah, I agree. Like, really, really well done.
Yeah, and coming from Dan, that means a lot, you know.
Yeah, Dan's a good dude.
Yeah,
yep.
I'm very flattered that he's you know, enamored of it the way he is.
Yeah. He's an interesting cat for sure. Yeah.
Right. Best-selling author. Yes.
Best-selling author. Among many other things.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Neuroscientist. You know, he's a real brainiac.
He is. He's Yep. He's a good dude. And if you want to hear the show with him, I'll put a link in the show notes to that too. Yeah. So I'm curious, you know, we have an audience of working musicians, most of whom are folks whose names are not known to most people, but out there slogging it out and playing for crowds and entertaining and all that stuff. I'm always curious to talk when I get to talk with folks like you who have sort of evolved from that. How did that evolution happen from, you know, playing in bars and small clubs and playing up, and looking back on it when you're on stage? And I kind of want to talk about some of that too, but I understand that, you know, there's logistical differences in what it's like getting to the stage. But once you're on stage, how much is different now versus, you know, what you experienced back then playing in smaller places and kind of as you were coming up?
The biggest change is the technology, but in terms of our history, we started out as a recording act, you know, not a bar band. You know, I was myself and Albert Bouchard, the original drummer of BöC, went to college together, and we were in a college band, and we played bars then.
Sure.
But in the underbelly, we were just aiming right for record companies from the beginning. And we were signed to Elektra and never had any music released. And when that fell through, we became a bar band. And so essentially Blue Öyster Cult played bars as the Stalk Forest group for about a year. And we were about to break up, and that's when we got the Columbia contract and became Blue Öyster Cult, and the rest is sort of history. But you know, so we were a club band sort of in the middle of our evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the record contract got dropped by Elektra. You played bars to put food on the table.
To survive. Yeah. We played the Rolling Stones. We played, you know, the Kinks. We played, you know, all kinds of Van Morrison, the Animals. You know, that was our repertoire at that point. Besides our own tunes, we throw in our own tunes, but basically we were hired to play the hits. You know. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I had heard bits and pieces of this, but I didn't realize that you essentially had to become at some level a cover band in that sort of interim period there.
Yeah. Also, the arc of Blue Öyster Cult's career, after we left arenas in about 1985, we played smaller venues again. We played a lot of clubs, and we
Yeah.
still do once in a while. But we pretty much priced ourselves out of the club circuit now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
and you can I mean, I'm sure you can draw a big enough crowd that you can earn that price as long as the room is big enough to hold the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been our philosophy lately. As we do slow down a little with age, not musically. I think musically the band's as good as it's ever been, but it's a different act than it was when we were in our 20s, certainly.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk a lot of, well, you mentioned the technology difference. So between, 40 plus years ago and today,
Right. Yeah.
what technology are you thankful for having when you go out and play live today? Are you on in-ears? Are you
Yes.
are you still playing through an amp
Great.
or?
Yeah,
Yep.
that was a great technology, and one which we sort of resisted for a while. And when we finally adopted it about maybe 12, 15 years ago, I wish I'd done it sooner. But
Yeah.
and what's good about it is you hear yourself great. You sing better. It's a lot better. Also, you don't deafen yourself either, because the earpieces are also like earplugs.
Yes.
And you sort
Yep.
of put back in what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is really comfortable. I mean, when we started out, we were opening shows, third on a bill, and we'd get maybe 10 foot of stage depth, and I had a full Marshall stack behind me,
Oh.
and I'm a short guy, so the speakers should be going right in my ear. And
Yeah.
I'm going there,
It's hard to hear
definitely.
vocals when that's the case. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it was hard to hear vocals, yeah, and of course, PAs have come a long way over the
Fair.
decades as well now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, live sound is a lot better than it was when starting out.
We talk a lot about in-ear monitors on the show. I would say, well, certainly all of our listeners are interested. Many have made the switch. I made the switch to in-ears about 20 years ago. As a drummer, it just seemed like the most obvious thing in the world. Oh, as opposed to trying to get a monitor wedge louder than a snare drum so that I could hear, vocals. That was
Yeah,
not a good path to head down.
yeah.
But a lot of folks, guitar players specifically, have trouble adapting to hearing their instrument and hearing their instrument blended with the band in their ears versus just in the room. Did you have any issue as you can? I know now that you're there, you're happy, but how was that transition from just using wedges and amps over to ears?
I took to it right away.
You did. Okay.
What I like to do is I like to have a full stereo band mix. I like it to sound as close to a record as I can, and then my voice and my guitar is maybe 2 dB louder than everybody else, so I'm still featured in my own ear, so I know
Yep.
what I'm doing. But I wanna hear everybody's voice, I wanna hear all the instruments. I know a lot of players just like to hear certain things in their cans, but I like everything.
I'm like you. I like
Yeah.
everything, and if I can get a stereo mix, man, it makes life so much easier just to get
Yeah.
some separation and all that. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of the, BOC members just have mono Q, but, I like stereo.
Stereo, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't understand folks that say they prefer mono to stereo for
Yeah.
in-ears, but it's fine.
And
I mean, it's
yeah,
personal.
and,
Yeah,
the bass is in the middle and the drums are stereo, but,
yeah,
the other instruments are where they are actually on the stage.
yeah. Yeah, and I wind up doing the same thing with harmony vocals or lead vocals,
Mhm.
depending on how it is. But
Yeah.
I position those so that they are eh, spatially relevant in my ears.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the better I can hear everybody, I think the better, my performance is. It's
yeah.
just you just know what everybody's doing, and you can really, react better than you can if you didn't have in-ears.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
are you, as a guitar player, are you using amps on stage still, or are you using modelers, or a combination of both, or?
I use a modeler, as the sound that the front of the house gets, and I get in my cans. I use a Strymon Iridium, and I use a 2 notes cab M as the cab emulator. And from
Okay.
there, it goes to my, delay and modulation effects. after the speaker, basically. And
Got
then
it.
on stage, there's a Marshall JCM 900, which gets the sound that comes out of the my front of house mix, and
Okay, so
that's
post
stage
modeler.
fill. That's just so that the close audience and the other musicians get something that moves there, so
Yep.
it's not silent,
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. Silent stage is a difficult
yeah.
thing to
So
communicate the right way. Yeah.
yeah, so we're not deafening the way we were. My amp tone would require, if it was a real amp, it would require it to be louder than my stage volume is. But
Yep.
it's there and it's
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I, when the idea of silent stage was presented to me, I loved it. And then as I started sort of working with it, it's like, well, wait a minute. If you've got silent stage, now you've got to reinforce everything in the middle for the folks who are up front. Because
yeah.
otherwise they're not hearing, all they're hearing is if there's live drums, they're hearing live
Right.
drums.
Yeah.
And those are, 20 feet away. So you got a weird comb filter happening. So yeah. Yep.
No, you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, so there is live fill of everybody on the stage,
Okay.
but again, but it's nice because we're not deafening, for the front
Right.
rows.
Right.
And there's usually these vocal monitors right on the stage in the center so that the people in front can hear the singing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes sense. All right, so we talked about singing. Blue Öyster Cult, in my mind, has always been a harmony band. I mean, you do a lot of other things too, but harmonies clearly well, maybe I'm wrong. Are harmonies an important thing that you think about? It sure
Yeah,
seems like
you're
they
not
are.
the
Yeah.
only one to say that. I've been doing a lot of interviews lately, and I don't think of ourselves as like a barbershop kind of band, but and I admire bands that have that kind of big front singing. But you're right, there is a lot of harmony in Blue Öyster Cult music, and it's something I really like.
Clearly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that just something you've? Where did that come from? What influences or what was the genesis of saying, hey, we should, instead of just having leads, we should have
Yeah.
some. I mean, your harmonies are fairly complex on a lot of your tunes.
Yeah.
As someone who has tried
Yeah.
to cover some of them over the years. Yeah.
We're sort of prideful in our arrangements. I think we're kind of
Yeah.
clever, and I think we're sort of, misdescribed as a heavy metal band. We were never a heavy metal
Agreed.
band. We were called that at the dawn of the phrase being coined, but what metal evolved as a genre is, has nothing to do with what this band is.
No, as I was sort of putting notes together for this, "Burnin For You" is one of my favorite songs, and I've always thought of it as a power pop tune. I mean,
Yeah.
and then seeing that the band is like, oh yeah, heavy metal, and so I'm like, well, yes, there are elements of that in your songs, but like, there's also this other side. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I like progressive rock. I like, I like some metal, but mostly
sure,
I'm a pop guy, just
got it.
not in the sense that that's what I do, personally, but I certainly like to listen to it. I don't mind.
Yeah,
I like the Carpenters,
yeah. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah,
They got
right.
yeah, amazing. Yeah. Uh, we love stories on the show, so I'll ask this question generally, but specifically, I mentioned "Burnin For You." If there's a story about the genesis of that, or a story about any of your songs that sort of took an atypical twist or turn as it was being crafted or released, or something about it.
Yeah, well, in the case of "Burning For You," I wrote that song with the intention of putting it on, the solo LP I did in 1981 called Flat Out, and, I'd gotten a deal with, Portrait Records, which is a subsidiary of Epic Columbia. We were on
Yep.
Columbia BOC, and, Sandy Pearlman, our manager and mentor, convinced me to let Blue Öyster Cult record it instead of putting it on my solo record, and that was probably a good advice. I think it reached quite a larger audience with Blue Öyster Cult doing it, and,
Yeah.
of course, the boys did a great job on it, and that's sort of the history of that.
Yeah. And I like that's one of those songs that comes to mind in terms of harmony arrangements and like very intentional things that aren't just the obvious, hey, let's sing some gang vocals for the chorus here, right? Like it interesting. Any insights into how you approached that part? Like, at what point in the song arrangement process do you stop and say, okay, now let's talk about harmonies. Let's be intentional about this.
I had a pretty good idea of how that was going to go, and
You did? Okay.
I arranged the vocals and the choruses and stuff, and
Yeah.
and the also the ahs at the beginning and the second introduction and stuff.
Yep.
You know, yeah, and like I said, I've got a pop sensibility, and I'll take elements from, you know, songs that are actually, you know, just consciously, you know, almost, you know, MOR sounding, and integrate them into, you know, the Blue Öyster Cult lexicon there.
Yep. No, yeah. Okay. So that really, that was not a band. It was not a collaboration in terms of the idea of putting it together. Obviously, it was a collaboration in terms of executing
No,
it.
by that point, everybody in the band that wrote, and we all did, you know, we were pretty sophisticated about what we wanted to hear. Like, you know, when Joe Bouchard would bring in a song, he'd have it pretty well arranged, and Al Lanier, same thing, and Albert, you know,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Interesting. As you've watched the music industry evolve, what are your thoughts on sort of we're beyond where most people think about albums? Singles are a thing, more of a thing. I mean, I guess initially they kind of were too with 45s, but
right. Yeah.
you know,
the album era was our time, basically, you know, when our first record came out in 1972, and that was just when LPs were becoming the dominant art form, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a great era in that you'd listen to one side and you'd try to make the side coherent in terms of being able to listen to it. And it was usually between 15 and 19 minutes, you know, then you would come out of your trance, get up, and, you know, turn the record over.
Flip it over. Yeah.
And that was great. You know, I think when CDs came out and you could put 80 minutes of music on a disc, you know, that's too much. You know, people started filling up CDs, but I can't listen to 80 minutes of anybody. I don't care who it is. You know, I mean, I'm being honest.
No, it's true. I have thoughts, and we can certainly have the conversation if you want. I have thoughts about the folks who are emphatic that LPs have objectively better sound. Certainly, if you like it better, then that's great. But and so I don't lament the loss of the LP for any sound quality reasons. I think we can get good sound quality from a lot of different mediums. However, that experience of interacting with the music, the flipping over, the enforced pause at the 20-minute mark, where you have to go and flip it over, and maybe you wait 5 minutes to flip it over, and you get another cup of tea, or you get another beer, or whatever it is. You know,
like a sip of something.
Take a sip of something. Yeah, exactly. And then also having the album cover, I miss. I miss the most.
Me too. And I think, you know, the current business is missing the move, because it would be so easy to embed all kinds of stuff, you know, in a phone or a you know, a laptop or something, you know.
Yeah, why don't we see that? You're right. I mean, I know we both talked before the show about being nerds with Apple computers and things like that. It baffles me as a nerd, and especially as one who has followed Apple for, you know, my career. I joke that my career has been Apple adjacent, which is true. But they seem like the perfect company to have paved this path with the iTunes store as that evolved into Apple Music, and just giving artists the ability. And I know they tried it early on. There were albums that you bought that had a PDF of the line, you know, what effectively was the liner notes.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But it didn't, like, obviously. It was like, you know, track 12 or whatever was, it's just a PDF.
Yeah, it was like the info.
Yeah, but
There's
it
no
seems like
reason that they don't do it, and I think they're really missing a move because you're right, the album jacket and the recording notes and the liner notes, that was a big part of the enjoyment of LPs in the vinyl era.
I agree. I even wonder, like when I'm listening to a song or
Yeah.
an album, whatever, on any streaming platform, why they don't. There's not enough info even about the artist. It's like, okay, who's in this band? Like how many
Yeah.
people? You just can't find it. And it would be really easy for them to either link out to Wikipedia, like at the very least. The data is there. Somebody's put it together,
Yeah.
or
There is,
integrate it in.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
I listen mostly on Spotify, and there is a credits button there, but
yeah.
there's usually the information is minimal. They don't really go into depth on it, and that's unfortunate. I think that it would really encourage engagement with the listener, and they're really missing a move. They should do it.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. It seems so obvious to me
yeah,
because it's too easy for music to become this passive activity. And as someone who plays in, I play in a bunch of different bands. One of them is band Bitter Pill, is an original band, and we do everything we can to give people something to do when they get home from the show and they're still awake and they go online. We want to give them, like, we always make sure we post our set lists and all the things. So if they want to dive deep, it's there. And
yeah.
I don't know why the streaming services haven't given us the ability to hook that in. It's weird.
No, you want that information. It's one of the reasons I like to listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage, because they go into the depth of the artist and give you all kinds of tidbits about the recording. One of my good friends is a troubadour singer, guitar player, and his name is Pat Guadagno. And when he performs a song, he'll tell you who wrote it, and he'll tell you a little story about it, and it just makes what he does, that much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always like, I call them vanity songs, but that's not a negative term. When I go see somebody who's generally playing their own music, and then they choose to play a cover song or something, and they tell us why. It's like that. I like that insight into who you are and what makes you tick, and learning about people's stuff. It's great.
Yeah. I wish there was a database of who were the musicians on every recording session that ever was. I would just love to know. When I hear like a drummer that's just got this great groove, I say, who played drums on that song?
Yep. It's weird because we can get that for IMDb. You'll do that for, you can go deep. If you're watching a movie and you're like, I like that actor, you can, like, that's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
The
need to build
music site used to have a lot of information like that, but it seems like they've diminished their accessibility or reach. I maybe they think nobody wants to read that stuff, but boy, I do.
Maybe it's just you and me.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows?
Yeah. I just, especially for legacy old timey recordings, I just want to know who did what, because they're not making any more of a lot of this stuff,
Yep. It's fun to go deep. I always say we're all nerds about something. And of course, people that listen here, generally, at least one of the things we're nerdy about is music.
Yeah.
And I have made a career in like creating content for nerds. And I'm not that smart. I didn't invent this idea. Why is no one doing this for music? Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe in your retirement while you're taking guitar lessons, you can also build this database for us, Buck. That would be
Yeah. I certainly want to pitch the notion. We can't be the only two people that think this way. I'm sure.
I know we're not.
A lot of people think this way. Yeah.
I agree.
Even with contemporary artists, you'll you see the video on the right side of the screen sometimes, and you're invited to watch that. But just to know who did what, the credit roll at the end of a video to find out who did the video.
Who was in it?
Right.
Yeah.
Who did the makeup? Who did the set design? You just want people should get credit for this stuff.
That too. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Um, you've played a lot of gigs. You've seen a lot of things. Has there ever been a moment when you're on stage, when you've been on stage, and you said you saw something or something happened, and you said, "This is the craziest thing I've ever seen." Any of those moments come to mind?
Crazy. Let's see.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you see stuff. We as musicians, the fourth wall is not actually a wall. We get to see through it, and so there's just stuff that happens. People being weird, people being interesting.
Yeah. Well, there was the famous riot in Minneapolis when we were playing with Black Sabbath, the Black and Blue tour. We'd finished our set, but the Sabbath took the stage. It was Sabbath with Ronnie Dio at the time, and someone threw a bottle and hit Geezer Butler in the head in the dark.
Yeah.
Basically, it was between songs, and knocked him out. He was unconscious, and stopped the show. And then after that, the fans rioted and like wrecked the the venue. They had these wooden folding chairs, and a lot of them are just smashed and knocked all over. It was, and as a consequence, we didn't play. We were banned from playing. Not Minneapolis, it was Milwaukee, and
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
So
that was sort
you
of
were banned from playing in Milwaukee
well
because this
downtown.
happened?
Yeah, because we were sort of blamed for the melee, but the
Yeah,
melee
sure.
happened because Sabbath didn't finish their show, and the fans were. And I don't know if understandably miffed, but it was blamed on alcohol then, and it was probably alcohol had something to do with it.
Probably right. Yeah.
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 I think the crowd was pretty well liquored up by that time. But
Yeah, it happens. It's
yeah,
it's a side effect of doing it. Yeah.
yeah. As far as strange things, I don't know. It's you're in a funny mental state. When you're sort of just surfing that wave of especially when things are going great. And
Yeah.
you're reading back from the audience. It's a really great experience. I mean, I love my job. I always like to play and sing, but sometimes it's just transcendental, and it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's
yeah.
very true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And for Blue Öyster Cult, we're good all the time. We like to say we never suck. We don't. But sometimes it's just amazing.
Right.
And that's
Right.
that's and when you're in that zone, I mean, people speak of the zone, and there is one for musicians, definitely.
Yeah,
Yep.
that there is.
Yep.
It is elusive.
Mhm.
In that I haven't figured out what the magic formula is. Of course, being prepared and rehearsed and all of those things
Mhm.
certainly helps, but
Yeah.
it's
I
not a
mean,
guarantee.
well, I mean, BOC has the luxury of stable personnel. As the current band's been together over 20 years, longer than the original guys. And
Wow.
and so we don't even have to see each other in between shows.
Sure.
We're just we do a sound check, and it all comes right back together. Then by the time we hit the stage, we are definitely on the same page. So
That's
we're
great.
very fortunate.
That's great.
Yeah.
How often do you find yourself hitting the zone? Is that an every show kind of thing or
You aim for it, but
well,
there's
of
definitely
course.
some nights where, where it's magic.
Yep.
But
Yep.
like I said, it's never bad. It's always good.
That's good.
So
Yeah.
we can rely on a competence, and also you know, we're like SEAL Team 7, up there. So, the way we just rappel in and hit the stage, and we just off we go.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you ever need to rehearse with the current lineup, or everybody just comes in
Yeah.
and ready to rock?
In the end of 22, we did 3 nights at Sony Hall, and where we did the first 3 albums in their entirety, each one for each night, and then we
Yep.
played another 80, 90 minutes of the rest of our repertoire.
Yeah.
And we had to rehearse for that because we hadn't played a lot of those songs live ever, and some of them we hadn't played in decades. And personally, I had to woodshed my performance because I don't play the way I did when I was 25.
Yeah. Right.
just my style has evolved and my taste has evolved. So I actually had to to woodshed and to play the leads like I did when I was, a young guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, it makes sense, I guess. Yeah, when you're going back to revisit that stuff and to play it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of the zone, I mean, that was magical because the audience had flown in from all over the place. A lot of people came from Europe and stuff, and the energy was just peak appreciation, and it was effortless almost, the performances. Yeah,
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, that zone, I think part of it is reliant on the audience. Like they are part of the formula for creating that zone in some way. I think the energy in the room. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably, the deadest audience I could think of was, we played a convention of record company executives.
That is not what I expected you to say.
Yeah.
However, it tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not gonna, like, stand on the tables and yell,
Right.
They didn't, but, it's not that they weren't appreciative, but, it's not the same as, like, an audience of your fans. Quite different. Yeah.
Quite different. Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. Anything else that you've got going on that you want to talk about? What show? Any other stories come to mind? Any tips you want to share? And if not, what show? What's the next? What's next? Yeah.
Yeah. What's your audience like? What do they do?
Our audience is a mix of people. I call us working musicians, and I like that term, but it's a mix of people working in the industry. So it's certainly a lot of weekend warriors out there, honing their craft, really playing. There are some people whose names many whose names you don't, and then also we've got a decent chunk of what I'll call the crew. People doing front of house, people mixing monitors, people involved. Not necessarily the ones on stage, but just as important to making the shows happen. So that's our audience.
Yeah. I just want to salute everyone that's involved in live music, because it's a beautiful thing, live music, and
it is.
I support it whenever I can. I see local musicians here where I live, and I see somebody busking on the street. I'll give them a bill or two. And just want to encourage people. And, I'm interested in the tech end, and I like to be able to, speak to the tech guys and have them know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I admire everybody, and I know everybody works really hard, and a lot of people are doing it mainly for the love of the work,
Yep.
And
for sure.
Yep. My hat's off to everybody.
Amazing. Yeah. What's coming up next for you? Do you have gigs booked for the rest of the year? Or you have the rest of the year off?
We have a few more. I'm going to Indiana tomorrow, and Ohio on Saturday, and band has a couple of shows in November and a couple in December, and then we're done for the year.
Nice.
And then 25, we're winding down. In our 50th anniversary year, which was 22, we did about 75 shows, and in 23, we did about 30.
Okay.
And this year we're going to do about the same. Maybe I don't know. I haven't counted them. And in 25, we've got a European tour planned for May, and we're taking some dates in America too. We got 5 or 6 so far, but we're definitely slowing down from our on tour forever reputation. We're actually, if you look at I don't know who keeps score, but we are the largest touring band of anybody. We play more often than Cheap Trick does, and they play a lot.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
So. Cheap Trick is beating us now.
Sure.
This year they're working a lot more than us, but
those guys.
I think we have like 4,600 dates in our career or something. It's just a ridiculous amount of shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had decades where we would just work all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you're a working musician. Like it's how it is. Like that's what you do. Yeah, yeah.
I still love to sing and play. I got to say, I mean, it's not work when you do that. The work is the other 22 hours of the day.
You got it.
Yeah.
Any tips? I know I've spent a little bit of time on the road. You've spent a lot more time on the road than me.
I'm on the road again. Yeah.
Yeah. What? Obviously, you have to pack light when you go on the road. Is there anything that you bring with you to just make, no matter where you are, feel like home, so that you're comfortable when you're out on the road?
You mean like a talisman or
Well, for some people it's a talisman. For some people it's a coffee maker. Brian Ray, who tours with McCartney, he likes to bring scarves because they've packed down flat, but he puts them over the lights in his hotel room to kind of give his hotel room a better vibe than just, the fluorescence. So
yeah, no, I don't decorate my room.
You don't do anything like that.
Yeah. I'll take the Holiday Inn or the Marriott, the way it comes. Yeah.
The way it comes.
Yeah.
Any touring tips or anything?
I like to stay at nice hotels, but we don't demand that we do.
Sure.
The business traveler hotel is good enough for me.
Sure, your standard Marriott works out
24 hours. If I'm in the room for 8 hours, it's a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of days off on the road because the way we tour now is mostly fly dates where we just fly out, with guitars, and we have about 15 pieces of gear that come out of New York, that we fly. But the amplifiers and most of the drums are provided at the shows. The Marshalls and and the Ampeg amp, bass amp, that's there already.
Got it. So that's coming from either the venue or a SIR or something locally or whatever.
Yeah, and as I've explained, my guitar tone, comes from the Iridium and the Alesis Quadriverb is my delay and chorus box.
Right. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So you're not spending a lot of time on tour buses these days when you're out on the road.
We take a bus if we go to Europe and we're on the ground. We'll be in a bus.
Yeah.
But not in America.
Not in America. Yeah. Any tips for maintaining the peace on the bus when everybody's sick and tired of being on the bus?
We know each other so well. We manage our relationship. It's like being married to 5 people.
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
You accommodate people. That's what's nice about working with personalities that are capable of doing that. I don't care how brilliant you are, if you can't get along, it's not worth it.
That is a comment I hear from everyone. It's that some level of musical competency with whatever your job is, if you're front of house or you're playing music, whatever it is, a minimum level of competency, sure. But after that, it's about the hang, man. Yep.
Yeah. And you hear that all the time with, session musicians and stuff like that. Half of it is just being able to do the job when you're required to, and to know how to get along with people. Yeah.
That's it. Yep. Not be too strong of a personality, but
Rodney King says, "Can we all get along? Let's get along. Let's do it."
Well, they had some history with that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for spending some time with us today, Buck. I appreciate it, and it's been nice getting to know you and all that good stuff too, man.
Nice to get to know you too. Yeah.
Yeah. What a pleasure. We have. Is there anything else you want to share? We're good. I don't want to cut you off here, of course, but
I would just advise if you want to see Blue Öyster Cult, I think the time to see us is now, because it used to be you could rely on us always coming back next year, but can't say that now.
All right. Well, consider the warning heard. Yeah. I have never. It's odd to me that I'm saying this, but I've never taken up the opportunity to come see you, but I'll make that happen next year.
Yeah. Where are you located?
I'm in New Hampshire. I'm in the Northeast.
Yeah, we don't play there too much.
Yeah.
Burlington.
I'm near Boston. I can get to New York, so
yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you can, I'd love to see it. Let me know.
I will.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing. That'd be great. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. What a pleasure it was. If you want to follow Buck, I'll put your Instagram in the feed, and of course you can follow Blue Öyster Cult too. Buck, there are 3 words that we always say. Would you like to say them this time for the episode?
Sure. Right. This is Buck Dharma of Blue Öyster Cult, and my advice to you is always be performing.